Hi everyone, and welcome to MOQdigital's PowerApps and Microsoft Teams webinar. I'm Molly, the Marketing Coordinator here at MOQdigital. I'll be your moderator today, so if you hear my voice pop in from time to time, that would be why. Today I have with me MOQdigital CTO Piers Matthews and MOQdigital Solution Specialist for Microsoft Teams, Andrew Higgs. They will be facilitating today's webinar. We encourage interaction and collaboration in today's event, so please feel free to use the Q&A section to ask any questions. And over to you, Piers and Andrew.
Thanks, Molly. That's fantastic. Welcome everyone to the webinar. This has been an exciting year for everyone. Obviously, there's been a lot of change going on, and ultimately, the purpose of today is to really walk you guys through about some of those new and great features of Microsoft Teams, specifically PowerApps in Teams, and talking through some of the new announcements that have recently heard with those who've been following the journey of what is now called Dataverse. It's been a long journey. Previously been called DataFlex, and then Project Oakdale, and now Dataverse. So we'll be able to dive into that a little bit more as the later on into the presentation. But we'll take a moment now to just reflect back to where we've been this year with Microsoft Teams. And if you look at what Satya Nadella was talking about back in April of this year, we were seeing more than 200 million Teams meeting participants in a single day. We had 75 million daily active users on Teams, and there's been a significant amount of investment that Microsoft have made into the product that has ultimately grown to today. Teams now has 115 million daily active users. Those are users that aren't just signing into Teams as their Windows desktop loads. These are users that are actively using Teams and collaborating and using it to its full potential. So you look at that journey from people now working from home, more remote learning in education, and redefining those practices of work. Collaboration is really taking that center stage. For those sales and customer service and first line workers. It's the fundamental key component to the way they do business now. Process automation has obviously driven a lot of that, and Microsoft Teams is an integral play, and we're seeing a lot of that on the rise now, where automation is taken front and center and tightly integrated into Teams by leveraging the Power Platform. Users are now demanding app centricity in Teams. The ability to bring in those business applications, bring them into the Teams application. Coming back to that, single pane of glass, as Teams has become that very quickly become that remote work operating system. The single pane of glass that to access those informations, having that app centricity, and ultimately providing that one place to collaborate.
So when we think about Teams, we really need to start thinking about Teams as a platform more than just a communication tool. And we believe here at MOQdigital, this shift is as fundamental as what happened with mobile phones. So if you remember back in the 2000s, we had mobile phones, and these phones are used with some basic messaging over SMS or text, and the ability to make phone calls and interact with each other like that. Then came along Mr. Jobs, and he had this idea of putting applications in phones, and very quickly we ended up with a smartphone, where our phones today are a lot more than just a communication device. They really are the center of our world, where we interact with these applications. Now, certainly from a business perspective, phones have become even more so. We have those business applications on those phones that we can work with. In the 2020s, where we are today, what we found with Teams and similar platforms is that we're moving from a collaboration-only space, with typically tools like Teams for unified communications. Typically in the past, Skype for Business was used for the ability to do instant messaging, the ability to make phone calls and interact in that way. What we now have with Teams is really this platform that allows us to add applications into those collaboration workspaces and end up with what's really considered a smarter workplace. What Microsoft has spent a lot of effort doing is to make sure that Teams itself is a developer-friendly ecosystem. So that means that professional developers out there should find it easy to build new application extensions for Teams and as a platform, as well as ISVs who have products who may want to integrate their products with Teams, the ability to quickly build up your application interface and load it into that Teams app store. So you can go and grab those apps and install them as end users. So when we think about this, we now know that Teams is obviously a platform. It's a place you can load applications into, but Microsoft is uniquely positioned, not only because the Teams gives us a place for pro developers to build application, but because Microsoft has the secret sauce up its sleeve. We know already that Teams is considered a leader by Microsoft in the Magic Quadrant for unified communications, but more importantly, and in addition to Teams, Power Platform is also considered a leader in those enterprise low-code application development platforms. So Microsoft is uniquely positioned to be able to bring these two powerhouses together to really provide that place where we can collaborate and communicate in teams, but also have a solution now where using enterprise low-code ability, we can build applications as power users, as end users, into our Teams environment directly.
So, Piers, to reiterate some of those points that you made earlier, from a communication point of view, Teams is ultimately brought forward, as a lot of people have experienced so far, the best of breed of what was Skype for Business, and as that communication tool, and brought it into that single platform. So the ability to have chat and meetings and the telephony and peer-to-peer calling, that Microsoft Teams has been able to provide that functionality. On top of that, it's then brought in that collaboration layer, the likes of being able to co-author on documents and store files within SharePoint, and really use that team structure and the channel structure to collaborate with their colleagues. And all of this is secured behind the Microsoft Secure Cloud, right? So having the enterprise level security, compliance, and manageability, looking at multi-factor authentication, conditional access, and the security and compliance components that go along with securing Microsoft's Office 365 products. So there's a big focus now on that customizations and extendability, which is ultimately what we're talking about today, is where those third parties have created their own products, such as the Poly application, Asana, Monday.com. They've got their own products that they're now tightly integrating into the Microsoft Teams platform through their App Store. And then obviously there's the organization developed applications, whether it would be through the Power Platform or Dataverse for Teams, that allows organizations now to create and extend their own applications that they're bringing special purpose to their teams. So ultimately, reviewing those business processes and those mundane tasks and whatnot, and leveraging the Power Platform to create that uniformity within the Teams application. So with that, the platform, when you see Teams as that platform, we break it down into some key components when building those applications. The platform ultimately provides a bunch of capabilities around notifications, driving actions and timely responses. These notifications can be called upon when when building your Power Apps and so forth, that you want to be able to notify staff of when certain activities take place. I'll skip over tabs and come back to it, but rich cards can enhance that experience with those notifications as well, using adaptive cards and so forth to be able to provide smart intelligence into the content that's being drawn through to notify those users. Tabs provide that Teams focused content and shared activity. So, having the ability to build out additional applications and integrate them into the existing channels and teams within the application. Bots drive queries and conversation flow, having that Q&A response and having a non-human to get that information quicker. Ultimately, if you need to have a database of Q&A answers, and having the power behind a bot to be able to provide that information to your staff, bots are apps. The development and ease of deploying a bot is so simple now, and we particularly see this very, very popular from a HR point of view. Graph API, obviously the language behind the Teams platform that allows you to tie into API-driven commands that can provision Teams and control the life cycle of Teams and the overall app flow, how it all works. Graph API is an absolutely powerful tool, and especially for to pull information out of Teams from behind the scenes. The Teams Admin Center is only going to give you so much. Graph API is really powerful. That will give IT admins and developers the power to get that extendable data that's behind the scenes. And of course, what we're here today about is the Power Apps, building those bridge existing solutions and build new applications to obviously enhance the business flow.
So when we think about this from a Teams perspective, really it's all about why do we want to build applications inside of Teams? Because the idea is what you want to be doing is engage your users where they are today. So if Teams has become that new operating system, really you want those applications to live inside of that operating system and be tightly integrated. When you think about the different categories or types of applications we can have, really there's two categories. The first is what we call the ready-to-use apps. These are the apps that are available directly in the Teams store and are by default integrated with the environment. So we have obviously all of the Microsoft pre-built Office 365 applications, from Word all the way through to Stream, Microsoft Forms, etc., ability to add these apps and directly work them inside of the Teams environment. We then have third-party partner applications also available in the store that you can just get from the store, install in your team, and start to interact with those things. So things like Poly, Trello, GitHub, and so forth, ability to link these applications in, ready to go, ready to use, and just install and work with. We then have custom applications that your business may decide to build. And really, there's two types of custom applications. There's those organization-based custom applications that you build from the ground up that's very specific to your organization. And typically, we find these applications are for departmental specific tools, handling employee resources, dealing with support info, and more specifically than not, very often doing process-driven type workflow. And that is a very neat category where the Power Platform fits into. We then have vertical solutions, healthcare, manufacturing, retail, and banking. And if you look at what Microsoft is doing, slowly but surely, releasing pre-built accelerators in these particular areas. So for example, the Microsoft Healthcare Cloud, this has essentially a whole bunch of components that we can roll up in the healthcare in vertical that have pre-built Power Apps and components that we can start to work with in the platform. So that's really ready to use and custom applications, how we think about approaching this with the environment. And as we said, the focus today is going to be on this organization-based applications, really those departmental tools in the tool. So when we think about the Power Platform, we're really going to think about the Power Platform as being the place where we can work smartly in tools. So what is the Power Platform doing for us? So the first thing the Power Platform is doing for us is allowing us to create custom applications from the ground up without any code. So the whole idea is a low-code platform that your makers should have the ability to work with, and that even your pro developers can get value out to quickly build in this sort of rapid application development environment, those applications. We should have the ability to automate those time-consuming tasks that are very much human-driven, and we can automate that. We want to be able to load and integrate with existing data, and most importantly, the apps that we build, we should be able to share with the rest of our team who are interacting with the solution.
So Piers, we've spoken a lot about the Power Platform. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what the Power Platform is?
So when we think about the Power Platform, really what we've got to think about is these sets of features. I like to think about the Power Platform as having four main tenets. Firstly, data, the ability to create data and then visualize that data. So this is the intelligence piece. Apps, so think about this as being the user interface. So the thing that humans interact with your application in order to capture data that then you can report on. Automation. So automation is all about driving human workflow and system orchestration, the ability to integrate different systems together and to obviously create tasks and have user complete those tasks. That's automation. And finally, smarts. So smarts is where we start to introduce things like bots from a conversational UI and the ability to integrate AI. So to be able to do things that we couldn't do naturally as humans, the ability to do that with some of the AI capabilities that we have in the platform. So how that plays out in Power Platform specifically is really the set of products on the screen. Power BI, which I'm sure many of you are familiar. Really, this is our data visualization tool in the Power Platform that allows us to connect to any data source, whether it be external data source, but very often data that's generated as part of a process, being able to report and understand how that process is performing. PowerApps is that user interface piece that allows us to create really two types of applications, Canvas applications and modal applications in all that PowerApps environment. We then have Power Automate. This is that workflow engine. So he's the one that's going to go and drive those human steps. But more importantly, it also does what I call system orchestration. That's ability to integrate a piece of data from one place to another place using that Power Automate flow. And then virtual agents, this is that intelligent bot, the conversational user interface. Underpinning the Power Platform is really the important stuff that really makes it all hang together. So the first thing we have in the middle over there is the data connectors. So data connectors are available to the rest of the Power Platform, specifically used quite heavily in PowerApps, Power Automate. And what they allow us to do is to connect to systems or sources of data, whether that source of data be a SharePoint list, whether it be a Microsoft list, whether it be an Azure SQL database, or whether that be a third-party system where we have a people connector, of which is over 300 of these connectors available today that we can use and plug into our systems. We then have Dataverse. Now, Dataverse, previously known as Common Data Service, Dataverse is essentially the central business database. The idea being, when I build these Power App business applications, I would want a central repository for data that all these applications can work in. So when I build an application, I build it off top of that Dataverse database, I really have that central data store that I can interact with and work with. It's smarter than that because it allows you to build workflows directly into that data. So as the field changes, a workflow can fire off in terms of a Power Automate and something can happen. It allows you to pre-build business rules, data format rules, and so forth inside of that Dataverse database. So really a nice sort of structure that's available to us. And really what we want to be doing is building our Power Apps and Power Automates on top of that as being that sort of storage location. And lastly, on the right, we have AI Builder. Really what Microsoft has done with AI Builder is they've taken all of their very fancy cognitive services or pre-built services in the cloud, and they've built them up as shapes that we can essentially use in our Power Automate or Power Apps to invoke some of that AI smarts. So here we have the capabilities such as forms recognition, the ability to train the model on a set of forms and have it automatically suck out to pull data elements off that form. So if you can imagine an invoice or an expense claim, be able to do that with AI Builder. Sentiment analysis. So looking at text that a human enters into our app, be able to tell if it's a happy or sad text, positive or negative. So this is what the Power Platform in its entirety provides us and allows us then as pro developers and as makers to go and build out or put together solutions on top of this technology stack.
Fantastic. So how does it relate to Teams? How does Dataverse work within Teams?
So here's the interesting thing, and this is where the big announcement recently came from Microsoft, is the ability to have the entire platform, or the key parts of the platform rather, loaded into Microsoft Teams. So what this means is that I don't have to use the fully licensed Power Platform externally. I have the ability, using my Teams existing licensing structure, to start to E3 above, to start to use that Power Platform inside of Teams. So what I get inside of Teams now, I get Power Apps, the ability to, inside of Teams, in a team, go and build an application. Power Automate, the ability to have that workflow automation. Power of Virtual Agents, the ability to have that bot interface. And the most important piece is underneath what we have is Dataverse, which means finally we have a really strong relational data structure that's available to us inside of Teams that we can build these applications, whether they be simple or complex applications. We have the ability to do that, as well as all the relevant data connectors that we may need in order to make our applications work. So think about it as a Power Apps Lite version, but very specific to allow us to build teams. The benefits we get out of this is, firstly, it allows our makers to build and deploy and manage your bots and workflow and data directly inside of Teams. So really quick to build inside of your team, click on a publish button, and automatically that application is then available and deployed to that team. So it really simplifies that process. One-click deployment, as I've said. Apps can be responsive to the way you design and build that app to work directly in mobile, web, and desktop clients. And one of the demos I'm going to show you today, although I'm going to show it on desktop, it actually works amazingly well in a mobile application as well, a mobile Teams application. So automatically those applications will become mobile-friendly enabled applications. The most important piece is the data and the licensing. So we get this relational data store over here, and we get it with the existing E3 licenses that we may have for Teams. We can start to work for this platform today and have all those neat capabilities for us.
So really, that really is the secret sauce to Dataverse. It is that having that common data source, right? And so when you're looking at what the business problems that we're trying to solve here, you know, it's you're looking at how we can modernize those legacy and traditional, we'll call them paper form processes, such as leave forms and expense claims, and developing those applications within the Teams application, and being able to call upon those common data sources. You know, redefining the way that the business are taking, you know, those legacy workflows and making them more modern by enabling staff to be able to interact with applications through the Teams application, with applications that are developed in the Teams application. So basically taking, you know, mundane tasks such as, you know, password resets and or collecting user data and then storing it somewhere, you know, you'll be able to collaborate on that data and access that data across the multiple applications that you develop in the Dataverse for Teams with that common data source. So you effectively being able to improve your collaboration of data by pulling in that data into a central place and having access to the multiple applications that you develop. So you look at like field workers and the way that they're using the technologies today, being able to share that information that you capture for those field workers with other applications that you build out in the Dataverse for Teams. You might be looking to build a HR bot, which I know that you will be demoing today. And how the power that the bots can obviously build into into Teams. Modernizing, like I said before, those paper forms. With HR processes, being able to use the PowerApps that you build to create those traditional processes around HR leave forms and travel requests and so forth. And of course, automation of tasks leveraging Power Automate.
100%. So I think we've done enough talking. It's time to show you guys a little bit about what the Dataverse for Teams environment looks like. So I'm going to crack into a couple of demos for you for that. So here I'm in a standard Teams environment. I'm showing this Teams environment in the web client just to make it easy to be able to be on the session here as well as demoing at the same time. So the first type of application we look at to really just give you a bit of a flavor of the type of thing that can be built inside of Dataverse for Teams, and then we'll show a little bit about the back end and how that all fits together. The first app we're going to look at is this idea of an ideas app. So imagine in our environment, we had a concept of we wanted an ideation process. So our business decided that we would create an ideas team that all parts of the organization could be members of. And if there's a specific campaign that we want to run to improve something in our business, we could get people inside of our business to post ideas and contribute to coming up with good ideas that we can then implement. And if we wanted to, we could have some kind of a reward system attached to that. So a fairly common use case. There's some very expensive third-party applications out there that do this for you. But just to show you how this could quite easily be built and be made available inside of the Teams environment as a solution. So here I've got my Employees Ideas tab, and in that Employees Ideas tab, it's going to load their Power App specifically for me. And this Power App then is going to allow me to have a look at the existing campaigns, as well as to, if I wanted to suggest or create myself a new idea. Right, so I'm in this application as an admin, so I have the ability, for example, to add a new campaign. But if we have a look at what we already have on this home screen, the top contributors, obviously I've been doing a bit of work here, so I'm a top contributor, and the top ideas based on the ideas that people are specifically voting on. I can see some existing campaigns that are running, and one of the ones I'm as an end user want to submit an idea is workplace safety. So if I click on that over there inside of my Power App, inside of Teams, all this data, by the way, living inside of Teams, inside of that Dataverse database, which I'll show you just now, I can go ahead and see all ideas that have already been created for me. So here's this workplace safety. There's a couple of ideas over here. If I wanted to, I could say, I'm happy with that. I like to vote for that one. I'm going to give it a bit of a thumbs up. I also have the ability to submit a new idea inside of this application. I want to give it a title. So I'm going to say, implement reverse parking, something that apparently is really good for safety. Stats show reverse parking policies improves safety. What impact will idea have? I think it's going to have a really high impact, and I think it's really low effort to implement such a policy. One of the things I may want to do in my little Power App over here is also go and add an image that represents that idea. I happen to have one handy because it's a demo. So there's my reverse parking image that I've uploaded over there, just indicating the concept. What I may also want to do as part of submitting this particular idea is I may want to add a supporting file. So maybe I've done some research or find some content that could support this or make it more valuable as an idea. And I've got a report where someone's gone and done detailed analysis on the value of doing reverse parking, and I can upload that. I've now gone ahead and created that new idea. I've submitted, I'm saying that I'd like it to be shared in the channel, and I submit that idea. That idea is then available for the rest of the business to go and have a look at and to vote on that idea immediately if they want to do that. So I can see there's that new idea. I'm going to sneakily vote for myself. So we haven't built in the don't vote for your own idea rule, but we can go ahead and obviously vote for that if I wanted to. Now anyone else has the ability to come and look at that idea and obviously interact with that. So really the whole idea over here is that a simple ideas application, something that we may want our power users to be able to build, or even our pro developers have the ability to build it up and have it land directly inside of a relevant channel and the relevant tab inside of a team. So inside of this application, I can directly interact and I can work with that accordingly. So one of the things you may ask is, where does all of that data go? And this is where we start to get into Dataverse for Teams. So if you look over here on the right, I've got a PowerApps icon because I've added the PowerApps solution into my Teams. If I click on the PowerApps icon, immediately I'm taken into that sort of Dataverse for Teams environment. You'll notice this is inside of Teams. I haven't broken out into PowerApps. And what I'm going to do over here is click on the Build portal or the Build Hub. Now, what this shows me is all the teams that I have access to where I or others have created apps that I may want to interact with. So here I've got that ideas team that I was just working with now. And inside of that ideas team, it's an installed application, which means I downloaded and installed it from the store. I can click on installed applications and I can say, I want to see everything that makes up this application because I may want to modify this application. So inside of this application, I can see that I've got a list of all the application components that make it up. So remember, that's PowerApps. That's that front end, all the screens that you saw. I've got chatbots. In this case, there's no chatbots for this one. I've got flows, if there were any workflows. And then I've got tables. And tables is really where all this data sits for me. So if I click on tables, for example, I can click on employee idea and I can go directly inside of this, edit that data and have a look at that data. And what we should see here is all ideas that have been submitted already as part of the solution come up. So we can see that it's coming over there, and somewhere over there will be my reverse parking solution, wherever I may have put it. And what that will then allow me to do is obviously see how that idea is busy being processed. There it is, implement reverse parking with images and so forth. So really, this is just a simple table structure where the data is being stored. Importantly, it is relational, which means that I can come up with quite complex data structures if I wanted to, representing many different tables inside of that solution as well. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of what the back end for that may look like. So really simple. What we've got over here is we've got ourselves this employees idea app, and then we've got ourselves that table over there. One of the things I may want to do is also edit this application. So if I click on that Canvas app over there, it's going to start to open up the edit view. Now, this is quite a large application, so it'll take a little bit of time to load it, but I just really want to get a view just to give you guys a feel for what it looks like when you're actually in the edit mode of a PowerApps application. And what we should see is we have the ability to go and navigate the different screens that have been created for that application, and we have the ability to modify those screens. Now, this was an app that somebody else built, installed on the tenant, made available to myself, and I have the ability to modify that Power App directly if I wanted to.
So Piers, what I'm seeing here is that you haven't had to leave the Teams client at all. You know, everything that you're building and working with here is consumed through the Teams application. Yeah. And the other thing that I've also noticed is that, and I'm sure that as you'll be showing us shortly, is the fact that a lot of these applications can be provisioned, and you don't require developers and a development team to actually build these things. You know, the IT administrators and staff can actively jump into this and start building these applications out themselves.
100%. Look, I mean, the way I always say this to people is there's different levels of applications. So a simple application, your power users can get it and they can build their 1 or 2 screens on top of the data source with their flow, and that's great. Your more complex applications, this one is quite complex, obviously a lot of screens. That's where your pro developers or your more skilled people at IT can get in and build that. So really there's that smattering of applications. The point is it is rapid application development where there is really low to no code in order for me to actually go ahead and work with that. So here is what this application looks like. I've got a set of data sources bound to it. So this is where all those tables are coming into the application. If I click on over here, I can see all the screens that make up my application that I have built. I've got mobile specific ones and so forth. And if I wanted to, I could, for example, go and modify that. So one of the things I may want to do, for example, is I might say, just a really simple example, well, I don't like that not having a border. I want to go ahead and put a border in it. So I'll go add a border on that application because I decided that that would make sense. And I can go change the border width, for example, if I wanted to, make it a slightly bigger border. Right, very simple editing type screen, really drag and drop functionality where each of these controls are there. I can bind data to those controls and I can work with them. The real reason I wanted to show this to you is how quickly it is to actually go and make that as a published application. So I can save that, I can preview it, and I can test that application. But one of the things I can do when I'm done working on that application, I may choose that I actually want to go and update that or publish that into Teams. And really, that's just as simple as clicking the Publish to Teams button. I click on Next. It's going to tell me where that's used, and it's going to go ahead and complete the publishing process for me.
So what this is, when you say publishing to Teams, does that mean that, you know, if I, as a staff member of the organization,
yep.
I can just go to the apps on the left-hand side of the 3 little dots underneath, and I should be able to find that application in there. Is that right?
100%. So that's putting it in your store, essentially, your organizational store. But more importantly, over here, what I'm done over here is you'll notice this app's already used. It's telling me where this app's now going to be updated. Well, it's been used in that general tab. It's already been used under that ideas team. I can go ahead and add it to another tab or another team from here. I just go save and close. And as soon as I've done that, it'll go and start that publishing process for me in the back end and update that application on that team for me. So it really has a nice way for you to edit and work with these solutions and then actually publish those solutions out into your environment for yourself there.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So that's the first little one we wanted to show you. The next idea that we had, just to give you another idea of the type of application you may choose to build with the Dataverse for Teams environment on top of PowerApps, is this idea of inspections. So imagine you were a retail store and you had field engineers or field workers who were working in that retail store, and part of what you wanted to do was really to make sure that retail store was top-notch. One of the things you may want to do is have the ability to have them go out and do inspections on the mobile devices or on their tablets, to walk around the store and have a look and make sure things were in order. And if not, you wanted to make sure that tasks were set up for people to correct those. So how would we build that in the Teams environment? Well, the first thing we need the ability to do is to define an inspection. The next thing we need the ability to do, we need the ability to complete an inspection. And when we define an inspection, we may want to be able to customize specific questions based on what we're expecting people to inspect. And when we answer those questions, we want to obviously complete it accordingly. One of the other things you may choose to do is use Microsoft Planner and actually have a workflow drive of Microsoft Planner. So if there's a task to go and correct something that was identified in the inspection, we can monitor and manage those tasks in Microsoft Planner, all really in this one simple place inside of Microsoft Teams. So over here, if I click on inspection, this is really the end user view. And the interesting thing about this solution, back to that apps working with the one data source, this solution is actually made up of 2 applications. One is the inspection application and one different application to manage the inspection and the creation of new forms. So now I'm in the inspection application as if I'm an end user who decides that he needs to go now and complete one of those inspections. So I can say, this is the status where I've got one overview task that's assigned in Planner to me, and I've got 3 active tasks. It's telling me what I've done in this week so far. Obviously, I've been testing this a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and perform a new inspection as an example of an application. So I've got different categories. One of the categories I've got is clothing. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want to complete a front desk clothing inspection. And what I have over here, it tells me these are the 2 things you're going to have to complete as part of this inspection. If I'm happy to go ahead and do that, I'm going to say I'm going to go and begin that inspection. So imagine I'm walking around the store now on my tablet, and I'm obviously able to walk through this and complete that inspection. So it says to me, the first question is, are the racks filled with suitable products? So I've gone ahead and checked that, and I said, yep, I think our product selection is correct, and the racks happen to be full. I then says to me, are the standards perfect? So are we displaying it really well in terms of what that display specifically looks like? In this case, I'm going to go ahead and say, no, I'm not happy with that. And what I want to go ahead and do is also go and add a task or a note. I can say the rack on aisle 3 is messy. Okay, and go ahead and save that note. What I can then do if I wanted to is I can say, oh, I want to automatically create a task for that because I'm not happy with that. So I'm going to go and create a task. Immediately it's gone ahead and pre-populated that task. I can say who, maybe when I'm doing this, I can actually automatically decide who I want to assign this to, or I can leave it to the manager to assign it later. So in this case, I'm just going to assign it to myself. Over there. And I can go and add that task related to this specific one. So that task has been added. And the last thing I may want to do is just to make it really clear, I can also go and upload a photo of messy clothes that I have over there. So that photo has been uploaded. I can review that inspection now and say that I'm happy I've completed all the tasks, and I'll go ahead and submit that inspection. And then if I want to go and do another inspection on a different form that I need to complete. So really simple kind of inspection type use case that might otherwise be quite difficult to build, building that directly inside of Teams on top of Dataverse. And obviously that data is then going into that Dataverse set of tables. In the Manage Inspections application, if I go ahead and open this one, this is really where the managers or the owners sit, and they have the ability to manage those inspections that have been completed. They also have the ability to define new types of inspections that they may want to happen in the application. All right, so here we can see the different types of inspections, and we'll notice there on the clothing on front desk, this is the one I just did, pending review. If I click on that inspection over there, I can see the issues that have been reported over there. I can see that there's a task and get directly to the task if I want to, and I can obviously go and update the status. In this case, I'm going to say it's pending action, and we'll go and save that one. So I've updated that accordingly. There's no issues on that one, but there were issues in this, so I'm leaving that in that sort of state over there. So I can go and manage that bit of work that has to happen if I want to. I can have a look at inspection insights as well, which is a little bit of reporting that's been rendered out in the solution over here. That gives me a view of who's been doing the inspections. Obviously, it's only me, and when they've been doing the inspections and how much time are they doing on individual forms completing inspections. So a bit of graphing available there as well. The last thing I can do over here is I can choose to define a completely new inspection if I wanted to. So over here, I could, for example, define myself a new inspection form, define the form type, and I can go ahead and add steps to that form if I want to for people to complete those individual inspections based on what I wanted to do. So really a nice little application over here built directly on Dataverse for Teams, hosted inside of Teams, inside of that channel where those field engineers would go work. Obviously the task list, so this is that planner where all those tasks have been created and allocated to the relevant individuals with dates and times for them to go ahead and complete those. And obviously as I've completed those tasks, I can mark those tasks as complete. And if I wanted to, I can have a nice Power Automate flow that goes and notifies the manager that the task has been completed and update the data source, for example. That's again another simple example of the type of solution that you could build using the Dataverse for Teams environment. If I click on over here just to get a look at what the back end of some of that application looks like, I think it's worthwhile to have a quick look at that. So again, I'm going to the Build Hub for PowerApps in Teams here. I'm going to go to the Field Engineers one because that's where I want to see the solution code. I'm going to click on Installed Applications, and I want to see everything that makes up that application because I may want to modify or have a look at it. So inside of that one, like I said, you'll notice we have two applications, and those two applications, inspection and managed inspection applications, are both talking to the same set of tables over here. So for example, if I click on area inspection, I can go have a look and see the data that's in this particular table, for example. So here we should see the different inspections that I've actually completed in the application are all tracked there accordingly. So that's really what that backend looks like. So really the way you would build one of the applications is you typically define your data model. So you define the tables that you want to store, and then you go ahead and you build your apps on top of those tables accordingly, as we have here with this inspection application.
So what we're seeing there, Piers, is that you've built multiple applications there inside the one application, right? So you've got your team there, and you've got the multiple applications. There are tabs across the top there for those applications, and you've also integrated additional analytics as well through the Power Platform, and again all through the Teams interface, leveraging those common data sources.
Yeah, 100%. So that gives you guys an idea, hopefully, of PowerApps inside of Teams. But obviously, as we said, Teams gives us other capabilities with the Power Platform. So one of the things we may have is to build a bot. So one of the use cases, one of our salespeople presents to me that they keep coming across, particularly in the healthcare industry and also in retail, is that you have casual workers, and sometimes in a bit of emergency situation, they need to very quickly onboard a new casual worker. And one of the challenges we'll pose is, could we do that natively inside of Dataverse for Teams with a bot? So we built this application the other day just to kind of take it through. I just want to give you a view of how this may work. So here I am, an HR person talking to my bot. We called him, decided affectionately to call him HR Bob. And what we're going to do is have a bit of conversation on HR Bob about how to onboard a new person, because we want the new person to arrive and on day one have access to all the systems, be in all the right teams, and be able to start working quite quickly. So I'm just going to go ahead and say hi. So generally, when you want to talk to a bot, you should say hello first. It's always polite. The bot's going to come back, is going to introduce himself to me and says, I'm an HR bot. I can help with leave, employment, and other matters. Let me know what you want. So I'm going to go ahead and say that, for example, we have a new hire. So I'm telling him there's a new hire that's going to come on board. So he says, sure, I can help you on board a new hire. So they're set up in all our systems, ready to go. Do you want to proceed? Yep, I'm happy. That's what I want to go ahead and do. And again, you notice this isn't me typing the text, although I could type yes. With that dialogue interface in bots, we can actually directly interact with buttons and so forth. So what is a new hire's first name? I'm going to call Jilly. And the new hire's last name. Jilly Johnston's. What area do they work in? So because it's an onboarding application in this particular environment, we're going to say this is sort of in retail, and we're a set of coffee shops around the country. So I'm going to say in this particular case, they happen to be a front office type staff person. And what is their role or title? They're what we call a barista in our case. And when do they start? I'm going to say in 2 weeks' time. So see how smart it is. You should be able to figure out what 2 weeks' time from today is. Awesome. Wants to know which branch they're going to working out of our coffee shop. So we're going to say they're going to be in the Brisbane branch. Do they need access to point of sale? So because they're barista, I'm saying yes. In this case, he is actually going to be working on the point of sale system. So we're going to say yes. Now it wants to know, are they casual or permanent employees? So here's where a decision needs to be made. I'm going to say casual. And what the bot's smart enough to know now is because it's casual, it means I need to know when their last day is because they're only really a temporary worker. So let's say in this case, the last day is the 21st January 2021. What's a mobile number? Give it a mobile number over there. It says, excellent, I've collected all this information to get your new hire, Jilly Johnston, set up to work in Brisbane as a casual, as a barista from that date to that date. That's the mobile number, and they're going to use the point of sale. Do you want me to go ahead? So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. So now what the bot's going to do is capture all of the data, and what it's doing behind the scenes is taking that data and is putting it inside of Dataverse, where all my workflows that go and do the work can now run on. So what are those workflows doing? Well, the very first thing it's going to do, it's going to go ask management whether or not we can approve this new hire to be created. So while we're waiting for that workflow to kick off, I'm going to show a little bit about what the back end of that application looks like, or that bot interface looks like.
So you could effectively tie in a whole bunch of workflows into this. Thinking from a HR point of view, you're looking at app permissions, you're looking at Active Directory groups that they can be members of, the actual process of going through and even creating that Active Directory object for that new hire.
Yep, sending the employee the welcome email, adding, posting a note automatically to your public company's LinkedIn that you've got this amazing new hire. All of those things can be done. So if I go ahead and I look at the people and culture team, because that's where I've built this application, just go ahead and see all. And we go to chatbots, we're going to go and find that HR Bob. So I'm going to go open the Power Virtual Agent editor interface over here now. And really, this is just to show you what the interface looks like to actually go ahead and create one of these bots. And what you should see is that really that whole thing we built without doing any code, we really just scripted out what that conversation should look like. And the bot was smart enough to be able to implement that accordingly. So I'm going to go to topics. So bots get topics. Topics are things that it knows information about. So I've got a topic that I created called onboarding topic. The onboarding topic says to me, what are the trigger phrases? So I give it a couple of phrases, as many as I want. It's smart enough to know that words that look similar to this or phrases look similar, these are probably the one that we want to get into and crack on a launch. So I'm going to go to the editor view of what that looks like now.
So this is the canvas where ultimately it shows us all the phrases and the questions and answers.
Yeah, 100%. And this is literally how you build that bot over there, right? And the thing is, it's really nice because I can do inline testing of the bot as well. So the ability while I'm developing it, I can actually start to test it. So a new hire. Here you go. And you'll see as soon as I do this, it starts to light up over here. And it's actually showing me the flow of the conversation as I go through that conversation. And really the important part of what happens over here is when I've collected all the data, because that's really what you're doing with bots, is you're collecting data to go do an action and then tell the customer something based on the action that you're going to perform. How do I perform actions is the important part. And that's where this gets really smart, because the way this performs actions is I'm actually calling a Power Automate flow and I'm passing the set of data through. So if I go ahead and I look at that, I can go and see what that flow request or that flow might look like specifically.
So you're calling a Power Automate flow, and that's being referenced inside that
bot,
canvas, that bot canvas. Right.
And all that bot's doing for me is it's taking that information and it's putting it straight into that common data service for me, or rather the Dataflex. Check at me, I'll get it right. Dataverse. The final name, Dataverse for Teams database, has dropped it in there for me, and obviously put all those fields in and put that in. It's a really simple little solution to knock together and put that into the application. If I went back, let's just get back to the Power App now. I'll show you that we should see that record has been added into the tables. Go ahead here, click on people and culture, and we're going to go look at the new hire table.
So again, you're seeing the leveraging Power Virtual Agents, being able to input, answer a bunch of questions. It goes off, kicks off some Power Automate flows, captures data, deposits that information inside the common data source here in Dataverse.
Yep.
And then obviously leveraging those additional flows, kicking off additional processes. That's absolutely fantastic.
If we have a look over here, that record's being created. It's currently sitting as approved no, because it's waiting approval. Right, and what I should have found is there should be a little workflow that's fired off. This is my approval workflow that's fired off. And really how this guy works, if I go ahead and edit that just to show you what that view looks like, we can see that as soon as a record is created, it says to me, create me a nice little approval, send this message to that specific team. So this approval is going to pop up in the people and culture team for somebody who's a member of that team to be able to go and approve. It's going to wait for the approval, and then if the approval's happened, it's going to go update the record to say the new hire status has been marked as approved. Yes. It's a really simple little solution over here where what we're able to do is use a bot or a Power App to put that in the database and then be able to have those workflows fire off and do approvals, for example. So if we go ahead and we look at that team now, what we should see is in the people and culture team, in that general tab, we will see that has come through now. So it says to me, you, Mr. Person, who's part of the people and culture team, who has the rights, Pier Matthews has requested on this date and time for you to go ahead and approve a new hire. The person's name is Jelly Johnstones, who's joining as a barista in Brisbane on the 15th of December. So if I'm happy that I can go ahead and click approve, I can put some comments in if I want to, good hire, and then I can go and submit. And as soon as I do that, as you saw in that workflow or that approval workflow, it's going to go and make the status of that record nicely automatically to be approved. And what we should then see happen on the back end of that is you should see the next workflow kick off, and that's the one that's going to do all the work. So now we've captured the data, we've got that data in our database, we've run the approval process, and the next bit of work that we want to do over here is we want to go ahead and add that person as a member to the team. We want to create that person's Active Directory account, and we want to put them into a AD group that allows them access to the point of sale system. So those are three common tasks that we may have in our environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's awesome.
So we're going to just go ahead and load that up just so you guys can see what that kind of a workflow would look like. So there you can see it's run successfully. I'll show you what that looks like in the edit mode, just so you can get a bit of a feel for it. So as the record's been updated, go ahead and confirm that it's been approved, otherwise terminate. It's been approved. All we're doing over here is a little bit of concatenation. So this is like an Excel formula, because what I know is that I know that the person's username is never going to be Piers Matthews, it's going to be P Matthews. So I want the first letter of the first name and the last name, so I can make a nice username out of that. I then use this pre-built connector that I have available to me to go and create the user in Active Directory and map all the properties of that Active Directory account. I can then say if the person is in Brisbane, then go and add them to the Brisbane team, and then go and check to see if they had chosen access to point of sale, go and add them to the AD group that gives them access to the point of sale system. All driven directly with no code through Power Automate with those relevant connectors. So if I go back to Teams now, and I go and I have a look at the Brisbane branch, for example, and I see who's members of this branch, I should see over there that Jilly Johnston, I think was the person's name. There she is.
There she is.
Jilly Johnston is a barista, and she's been added here as a platform. If I go to AD now, so this is AD, the point of sale users group, and I refresh that, hopefully we should see Jilly Johnston's been added there as well. And there Jilly Johnston's been added as a member over there. And if I click on her actual AD account, we'll notice in this case, all those relevant properties like mobile number and so forth have been mapped into the system. So there that user is provisioned and ready to go and available now simply by using that bot in the application stack for us there. So really what we've tried to do there is give you 3 examples of how you may choose to use Dataverse and PowerApps together inside of Teams to build a solution that's very robust and nice to create. Do you want to summarize for us, Mr. Higgs?
Yeah, sure. So effectively what we're seeing there is that with the ability to bring forward your ideas, you know, we can ultimately as a business bring forward and collaborate on those ideas and ultimately develop applications and processes that are going to improve our everyday lives. I like the fact that, you know, leveraging the HR Bob, you know, that, you know, HR have the ability now to, you know, by using a bot and following Q&A, they can actually streamline their hiring process, and then obviously the ties into the automation in the background around provisioning the Active Directory account and adding them to the AD groups and so forth, and it really streamlines that process, and it's not so much heavy on the service desk or to actually go ahead and manually create those accounts. I also like the fact that these applications can be both consumed through mobile and desktop applications, you know, and you know, whether or not you're using a tablet or a PC, you know, doing as you saw with the inspection app, the ability to complete those tasks is uniform across those different devices as well.
So hopefully we've given you a smattering of the different types of applications that you can build. Really, there's 2 options for building applications. The option 1 is you can use the full Power Platform and Dataverse outside of Teams. This is where you're going to build those enterprise-wide, large-scale applications. So those ones that you build, you can build them the way you always have done in the Power Platform and then embed them in Teams. Option 2, what we focused on very heavily today, is using Dataverse for Teams. This is when you're trying to build those really specific team-oriented applications. And obviously, as the platform essentially comes for free with Teams, there are some technical limitations. But what's great is when you hit those limitations, you can always move that application, upgrade from Dataverse for Teams to the full Dataverse flavor, which gives you kind of all those sets of capabilities. So it might be worth chatting a little bit about some of the limitations and how some of the security works. So the first kind of thing is how security works when you build Dataverse for Teams-based applications inside of Teams. It's designed to live with the life cycle and work with the life cycle of Teams itself. So what we find, there are pre-configured security roles that are related to membership types, whether it be owners, members, or guests. You can do certain things within those applications and build or not build applications depending on which one of those roles that you work in. So you really have those 3 role levels. Where we look at the bigger version of Dataverse, we can start to be a little bit more fine-grained and do things like row level and field level security on individual members in that data store. We have some storage limitations. There's a storage limit of 2 gigs per team, which really on a data or text field means that we can have probably up to 1 million rows of data. So this is really a lot of data. We also have the ability to have up to 500 teams that have Dataverse for Teams enabled. So if you really think about 500 teams, is a huge amount where you go ahead and build these applications. At any time when you reach limitations of the 2 gigs, like I said, you can upgrade to full Dataverse and also upgrade potentially to full PowerApps or Power Automate solution. From a connectors perspective, as we get with PowerApps that's natively available with us in 365, we get all the standard connectors for free available in the box. I often get asked the question about custom applications or custom connectors if you wanted to build your own. So recently, Microsoft made this even easier for us. So if you have a custom or difficult solution and you have a pro developer, he has the ability now to create an API, expose that API in Azure API Manager, and then make that API automatically available to PowerApps that live inside of Teams or PowerApps outside of Teams. So really a nice way to build some of that custom connectivity, which you didn't have before. So really, Dataverse for Teams, a great version of the full Power Platform, specifically built so we can build those applications natively inside of Teams for ourselves. One of the questions you're probably wondering, well, what about governance? Well, governance is always a thing when we have these new features available. How do we control it? As IT pros, you're always worried and we want to know about that. Well, there's a couple of things. The first thing is that the governance for Dataverse for Teams works in the standard Power Platform Admin Center. So the way we manage normal Power Apps and Power Platform environments is the same way we manage the environments for Dataverse for Teams apps. So these applications that we may choose to build, we can do things like turn on data leak prevention policies. We can manage usage and quota through the Power Platform Admin Center. And lastly, Microsoft has a fantastic Center of Excellence toolkit, which we actually have another video that maybe you care to watch, or we kind of take you through the full thing. What they've done is they've extended that toolkit specifically to cater for Dataverse for Teams as well, which means we can have a reactive approval of environment location workload. So a pre-built workflow, so someone goes ahead and starts to build an application, and 3 days later, they have to supply business justification for doing that. IT or whatever you deem gets to approve the business justification, and if it's approved, they can continue working, and if it's not approved, that will be removed. So that's the kind of reactive model. You can also do a proactive model if you wanted to. So we definitely have the ability to govern and to manage this platform as we start to roll it out. In terms of licensing, probably one of the most interesting pieces. So today, if you have E3s and above and access to Teams, it means that you have Microsoft Dataverse for Teams Lite. It's available for you. You can start working with it. Everything I showed you today. It gives us Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents together with Dataverse as that data store living inside of Teams. You can use that immediately. The other way to build apps with Power Apps on top of Teams is to obviously go for the full Power Platform licensing, which means that you get full Microsoft Dataverse. You choose to license your users per user or per app or per flow. You get the ability to start using robotic process automation as an add-on. You can start to use the AI models as a feature, and you can use Power Apps portals for external user interaction. So that would be the full Power Platform way of licensing the solution. And that, I think, is it.
Yeah, no, that is it. That is it. Whilst people are firing their questions off in chat, we're still waiting. Haven't got any questions just yet. But what I might do is step people through the next steps for how to engage. What are the next steps? So ultimately, we have a app design in a day workshop where ultimately we can sit down with you and work out what is your outcomes, what are your requirements, what are you hoping to achieve, and actually building out what the framework would look like to get an app deployed into your business. The workshop is basically going to provide you that high level framework as to what is required. And if you look at what Piers has shown us today, these have been very much low code and easy to get up and running applications. If you're looking at what your processes that you're trying to unify and integrate into Teams, an app design in a day workshop will help you define that process and help you get a good understanding as what's required to get started there. We also have our Power Platform videos available on YouTube. So anyone who follows or subscribes to the YouTube channel for MOQdigital, all of our previous sessions that we've run on Microsoft Teams and the Power Platform, those videos are available on YouTube as well. And of course, the best thing for anyone to do is to get their hands dirty and create their own environment. Jump into Teams and Power Apps and Power Automate and start having a play and getting a feel how Dataverse is going to significantly improve the way that you can access data within your applications that you're building within Teams.
Awesome.
All right, we don't have any further questions.
No more questions have come through.
Okay.
But we have finished right on time.
Yeah, so awesome, guys. If there's any questions after that, please reach out either to myself or Andrew. We'll be following up the webinar with a link to the recording of the webinar. You can go back and watch it later. And certainly keen to get in there and help you guys get used to the Dataverse for Teams platform and to get your first app up and built and running in the solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone. Have a
everyone.
great day.